Can you start reading?
Is that what you want to do? Bach à la Moog. In 1782, Mozart arranged a number of Bach fugues for string trio. Since then, many great virtuosos and composers have been sufficiently fascinated by Bach to take time out from their main pursuits to transcribe his music. Bach's works have thus always exerted a continuous magnetic attraction on musicians, and even today they repeatedly return to the study of his art to learn more about their own art. It is only natural then that today's electronic composers have continued this tradition. On the face of it, electronic music has a great deal to offer to Bach. Many Baroque characteristics, such as crisp, bright sonorities, terraced dynamics, and high relief of voices, are among the most idiomatic features of electronic music. Indeed, no combination of live instruments could achieve the clarity of texture of this recording. At last, every note and line can be heard, which was one of our chief purposes when we first began to work on Bach. But of course there is more to Bach than clarity. 2 years ago this album could not have been made with the equipment then available to obtain the qualities that make up a good performance as a thankless, time-consuming and ultimately futile enterprise. Even rudimentary phrasing, articulation or modulation of timbre could involve more grueling hours for the production of more mere seconds of music. Crescendo and diminuendo, the two most natural vocal or instrumental means of musical expression, require the most calculated and laborious manipulation of volume controls and filters. Even programmed or computerized attempts to automate spontaneity were entirely a matter of guesswork, and the musician was unable even to hear, much less to modify, a sound as it was being produced. Only the least sophisticated means of expression, i.e. timbral and dynamic contrasts, could be controlled satisfactorily. These and other limitations were evident at any time an electronic composition contained a line at all instrumental in nature. It was at this impasse that Walter Carlos implored Bob Moog, the originator of the commercially packaged synthesizer, to work with him in evolving new subsystems with which the production of more sophisticated nuances of expression would be a practical matter. The modified synthesizer resulted from their collaboration was a musical instrument. Like any musical instrument, it has extraordinary capabilities and maddening limitations. Playing it beautifully requires as much skill, practice, talent and taste as any ear for new and different sounds. Often 2 pairs of hands and several feet are needed to take advantage of all that the Moog synthesizer can do, but the instrument is constantly being improvised. This album then is a proving ground both for the synthesizer and for our collaborative musicianship. We've tried to make our performances musically expressive, electronically idiomatic, and spiritually and musicologically faithful to Bach, conditions probably not totally reconcilable. Some sounds took hours to perfect, others were built and then regretfully abandoned. Sometimes we had to choose between technique and spirit. Sometimes the historically correct ornamentation didn't sound. Many sessions were spent rethinking, retouching, remixing, rejecting. But at last we achieved results that we feel have musical validity. Through all these difficulties, Bach's great works were an ever-renewing inspiration to us. So it is with a sense of deep humility that we present them to you in electronic garb. Fittingly, this record begins with a transcription of a transcription, The Sinfonia from Cantata number 29 is a miraculous elaboration over the preludium of the E major partita for solo violin. Bach transfers the works down a tone, transferring it note for note to the organ, and then adding 3 trumpets, timpani, strings and oboes, transforming the mood from light and cheer to triumphant affirmation. The choral prelude, Jesu, joy of man's desiring, concludes both halves of Bach's cantata number 147 for the Feast of the Visitation. The string figuration, long, flowing and pleasantly ambiguous in phrase structure, nevertheless adapts itself brilliantly to the irregularity of chorale tune. Bach's inventions were intended not only as teaching pieces for the young player, but also as models in composition. Composers of any century might well envy the extraordinary ingenuity of the stretto in the B-flat invention. Included here are 3 two-part inventions in F major, B-flat major and D minor. In place of August Wilhelm's once famous solo violin arrangement for the G-string, on the G-string of the air, the strings and continuo from the suite in D major, we offer our study in reed tone, which shows that the lower voices are at least as important as the famous melody. This realization contains the subtlest sound on the album and is dedicated to the memory of Marcel Tabuteau, for years the great solo oboist of the Philadelphia Orchestra. The prelude in E major is actually a gigantic introduction and double fugue, with the theme of the introduction reappearing as the second subject of the fugue. Words cannot convey the titanic cumulative effect of the work. Many critics have objected to the perky good humour of the fugue proper, as inappropriate after the grave majesty of the prelude. Actually, it is a perfect foil for its predecessor, as welcome as Trincula after Prospero. The prelude in C minor is an object lesson in how Bach touches an artistic convention with genius. For 3/4 of its length, it behaves like any arpeggio prelude, content to make its effect through the building momentum of its characteristic figure. Then, just as it reaches an impressive climax, things go awry. The bottom voice seizes the floor for an angry solo. The characteristic theme flies into a tailspin, and a passionate recitative is required to restore order. The fugue is notable for the long 16th note scale passages that give it special urgency. The chorale prelude appears in Cantata number 140, which is a retelling of the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. The tenors of the chorus dovetail the archaic, irregular chorale melody by Philip Nicolai into the almost quadrangularly symmetrical line of the upper strings. This is another work that Bach transcribed for organ. The third Brandenburg is one of the portfolio of 6 highly varied concerti grossi that failed to get Bach a job with the Margrave of Brandenburg. 3 violins, 3 violas, 3 cellos and bass, along with the ubiquitous continuo, massed together into a fair-sized Baroque orchestra. More often than not, however, they split into solo groups or venture forth as soloists with fascinating results. The first third of the first movement is an exhaustive discussion of the opening tutti. The remainder is a remarkable study in contrast, as a querulous second theme keeps intruding and getting shouted down until the cellos and brass at last invert it, turn it into a nightmare and exercise it. Bach provided no second movement other than a Phrygian cadence. Obviously, he expected the continuo player to improve a cadenza leading up to it, thus giving the listener a rest from the string tone. Our improvisation is a fantasia after Bach's most florid and chromatic style, and incorporates a number of virtuoso electronic effects not heard elsewhere in the album. The last movement is much less complex than the first. It is a good-humoured, bumptious dance with a lot of exuberance and sparkling first violin and first viola solos. How Bach managed to preserve the sound of the first movement here with such a light texture is a secret he shares with only the greatest masters. Is that enough?
No, the whole thing, please.
Run the whole thing.
Yes, please.
Electronic music began as an aesthetic experiment in which early electronic music composers allowed the basic processes and simple materials of classical electronic composition to dictate the form as well as the content of their music. Today, despite the availability of sophisticated equipment for the electronic production of music, few musicians have taken the trouble to develop the combination of technical expertise, aesthetic discretion, and the manual dexterity that is generally associated with a professional performance of traditional music. Walter Carlos's realizations contained in this album are a dazzling display of virtuosity in the electronic medium, but Carlos has clearly gone beyond mere virtuosity. He's shown that the medium of electronic music is eminently suited to the realization of much traditional music, and in doing so has firmly brought the electronic medium into the historical mainstream of music. This album is the most stunning breakthrough in electronic music to date. The birth of an idea. About a year ago, Walter Carlos asked me to listen to several of his electronic compositions and realizations, which encompassed his experiments from 1957 and his subsequent collaborations with Ben Folkman that started at the Columbian Princeton Music Center in 1964. One of the tapes I heard contained the charming performance of The Invention in F included in this album. This completely electronic realization seemed so right and natural that we immediately made plans for a whole album of electronic Bach. Then a few months later, the first movement of the Brandenburg No. 3 was finished. It exceeded my already high expectations. Excitedly, I called my good friend Edouard Strata at CBS Records, who generously spread his enthusiasm throughout the rest of the company. The album was completed with the guidance of Mr. Strata and also Mr. Paul Myers of the CBS Masterworks department, who kindly allowed us complete artistic freedom in the production and realization of this album. It would perhaps be presumptuous of me to claim any too large a role in the project developed and realized by the genius of Walter Carlos, composer, virtuoso performer, and symbiotic musician technician, and his dear friend and collaborator Benjamin Folkman, musician, musicologist extraordinaire, whose special insight into the nuances of great performance was an invaluable contribution to the artistry heard of from this album. It is a respectful amalgam of old and new that leads into a most helpful and interesting musical future. I know you will share any enthusiasm. That's it.
What did you make of the album?
I don't understand it. Do you?
I haven't heard it yet. I haven't heard it. Thank you for reading it though.
Why did you make me read it?
Because it's quite good to read things, isn't it?
No, I don't know. You recorded it.